Hello and welcome back to Swapnil's analysis. Today we are going to discuss about William Wordsworth and his poetic style of William Wordsworth. So I have made most of the videos on William Wordsworth's poem. So today I decided let us discuss about William Wordsworth poetic style. So William Wordsworth, as we all know, is a romantic poet, also called as a father of nature poetry, and he focused upon countryside and rustic life, and the language he used was a simple language used by the rustic people. So this last part though has been criticized by his contemporary St. Coleridge and later on the great scholar T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot questioned about the poetic style of William Wordsworth, his composition style of William Wordsworth. So today we will focus upon William Wordsworth and his poetic style and the subject he dealt in his poetry. So William Wordsworth, as we all know, he was born on 7th April 1770 in a Lake District, North England. And as he grew up around the nature has influenced upon, nature had a very great influence upon the mind of William Wordsworth because he was living or he grew up in the arms of the nature. But when we glance upon the life of William Wordsworth, one thing we come to know about that when he was 7 years old, his mother passed away, and when he was 13, his father also passed away. So William Wordsworth, he became orphan at the age of 13 with his sister, and he inherited some of the property of his uncle and his father. So William Wordsworth actually became fascinated towards the nature, and again why he's called as a romantic, because he questioned the tradition. He did not follow the poetic tradition, and one of the most important thing for that was 1789's French Revolution. William Wordsworth, he had visited France in 1790, and there he was very influenced by the French Revolution, the idea of equality, fraternity, brotherhood, and the republic. So William Wordsworth, he became a very staunch supporter of republic and democratic principles. So therefore, when William Wordsworth he was writing, at that time neoclassical thought was very dominating. So what was the neoclassical thought? The neoclassical thought, they give importance to the structure rather than the individual feelings. So till 1780 or 1785, neoclassical thought was very dominant in English literature, as we all have studied. So 1750 and 1798 is also called as a transitional period. So many thoughts that came into existence during this period. But most of the thoughts or most of the poetry that was based on the classical ideas. They based on the classical structure, be it epic, be it ode, and they gave importance to the structure rather than the individual feeling. So the earlier poem before the William Wordsworth was William Blake, who focused upon the social life of England, how the poverty-stricken London city, how the poor were living in the London city, and he gave voice to the poor people of the London. And before that, William Goldsmith, he wrote about the village life, how the village people, they were migrating towards the London for the better life. But William Wordsworth, because he was influenced by the French Revolution and because he had visited France in 1790, that had a very huge impact on the young mind of William Wordsworth. So William Wordsworth, he wanted to write about countryside. Why he wanted to write about countryside? Because neoclassical poets, they confined themselves to the urban life. They confined themselves to the London city. So William Wordsworth, he wanted to talk about the people, he wanted to talk about the countryside, he wanted to talk about the rustic people. And so when in collaboration with S.T. Coleridge, he wrote lyrical ballads. And in the lyrical ballads, he also wrote a preface. And in that preface, this is the preface to lyrical ballad is also considered as the manifesto of romantic poetry, manifesto of nature poetry. So William Wordsworth, in that preface to lyrical ballad, he writes that poet, they should focus upon the nature. They should give preference to the rustic life or rustic language. Why? Because rustic people, they are very genuine people. They are not artificial, they are not fake. The feelings expressed by rustic people, they are genuine, unlike the fake feelings expressed by the urban people. So although William Wordsworth, he was a city man, but he was fascinated towards the countryside of London. He was fascinated towards the rustic life of London, the rustic people of England. So therefore, what he would do, William Wordsworth, he would go on the visit or the tour of the countryside of England, and then he would observe the thing. He would observe the custom, local custom. He would observe the local tradition. He would also observe their way of speaking, their dialect. And therefore, and when coming back to the city, he would recollect all what he had seen, what he has experienced, what he has witnessed. And then he would write about it. The one thing was very important for his poetry, that whatever it may be, it must appeal to his heart. That thing, that rising sun, that setting sun, that country girl sitting, that country girl singing in the farm, the bower, the river, the birds, whatever it may be, it must appeal to his heart. So William Wordsworth, rather than giving importance to the other things, he gave importance to his own feelings. What he thinks about the rising sun, what he thinks about a country girl singing in the farm, what he thinks about the river, what he thinks about the dead silence in the woods. And therefore he wrote all his poems in a very simple and lucid language. Therefore he did not follow any kind of tradition. He gave importance to individual feeling. What I feel, I do not care what the other feel about the rising sun, what other feel about the singing song, what other feel about the traditional song, what other feel about the bower, what other feel about the woods, what other feel about the river. I don't care. I like the river. I like the song of that country girl which was singing in the field, and therefore he wrote about all these things which the earlier poet neglected or they ignored, or which they did not give, which they did not talk about. So William Wordsworth, he was the first poet to talk about countryside, to talk about country culture, rustic life, and rustic people, and he glorified that. For him, nature was the sole source of inspiration. He considered nature as a beauty. So, whatever it may be, a natural thing, and therefore he considered that rustic people, they were very close to the nature because they live in the area surrounded by nature. Therefore, their feelings were natural. Their feelings were natural, their emotions were natural. They were not artificial or fake people. Therefore, he gave importance to countryside, rustic people, and rustic culture or the tradition, whatever it may be, because he considered tradition as a part of nature. So, when we read William Wordsworth, we must bear in our mind that William Wordsworth, he was the first poet to talk about nature. Why he wanted to draw attention of the readers towards the countryside of England? Because he wanted to talk about those people. He wanted to draw attention of the urban people towards their own brothers who were living in the countryside. And he also wanted to bring them forefront. He also wanted to bring them their culture, their tradition, their language to the mainstream. So William Wordsworth, therefore, he gave importance to his individual feeling, and he did not follow any kind of earlier traditions. William Wordsworth, he did not follow any kind of earlier traditions. Rather, he has a strong dispersion, aspersions, and reservations for the poetic tradition. What he felt, that a poet, he should be free. A poet, he should be free. He must write about what he feels. He should not care about what other feels. He should not care about the other people. If he likes anything in the nature, he must express himself. Therefore, the poetry of William Wordsworth is named as romantic because he did not follow any of the set conventions, any of the set traditions. Therefore, he is called as a father of romantic poetry. Nature dominates in his poems. Therefore, he is also called as a nature poet. We may disagree because contemporary magazines, literary magazines, they called William Wordsworth's poems as a very childish. Why? Because he wrote poems on a very simple topic, a very simple subjects, and the language used by William Wordsworth was too very simple. Therefore, many of the contemporary critics, they had criticized William Wordsworth poetry as a childish poetry. Therefore, he himself has described the poetry that a poem is a spontaneous overflow of a powerful feeling recollected in tranquility. Spontaneous, a poem should come from the within, and it should be spontaneous. It should not be planned. So, when we read William Wordsworth's poem, one thing dominates in his poem, that is the countryside and the nature. Either nature, he talks about the nature, or either he talks about the life of the countryside people. Therefore, William Wordsworth is also called as harbinger of the romantic poetry or the nature poetry. So the poems like Daffodil Flowers means, just imagine, Wordsworth had seen the bunch of daffodil flowers and he had written a very iconic poem on the daffodils. And the Solitary Reaper, when we read Solitary Reaper, he actually doesn't understand a single word sung by that bonny lass or Highland girl. Still, he was fascinated towards the tone of that girl, and because he thought that girl, that song of that girl was a part of a tradition, past tradition, and therefore it has become the part of the nature. Therefore, it was beautiful. Again, the Lucy poems. Lucy poem, Lucy has always been shown as a country girl, a lonely girl, and how nature has played a very seminal role in the fate of the Lucy. Again, one of my favorite poem, which I am definitely going to make a video upon, is Affliction of Margaret, where how a mother, she pangs for her young child who had gone for the work in the city and who had not returned back, and how she was waiting for that child. That the sorrow, that the melancholiness, that the sadness has been reflected in this poem. That is also a very important poem. And one of the important poem is the Ruined Cottage, where William Wordsworth, he talks about the family and how that family is torn apart by the circumstances. That is a very highly recommended poem from me, that you must read this poem, The Ruined Cottage. And all his other poems like the Prelude, the Ode on Intimation of Immortality, all these poems, they are very popular poems of Wordsworth. And Wordsworth, he talks about what is the one of the most fascinating thing of William Wordsworth is that he focuses upon the country life. He gives preference to the lives of the rustic people, and he is very particular about selecting his people, selecting his subject. So be it Lucy, be it that Highland girl, be it Margaret, a mother, be it a Ruined Cottage about the family, and all his other Lucy poems, be it the flowers, all these things, they are very dear to him, which had affected, which had influenced Wordsworth, and which had forced Wordsworth to write about on this subject. Therefore, he himself had followed his definition of poetic creation, that is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So all his poems seems very spontaneous, as if they were coming from his heart. So whatever critics may say, William Wordsworth, he is definitely going to be remembered as a very master and great poet of English literature, who started a new kind of a poetry. It is a very difficult thing to start something kind of a new. So howsoever we like or dislike William Wordsworth, or we criticize William Wordsworth is no doubt a major poet of English literature, and his poem, they have always given us a joy. So if you have liked this video, please subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.